The LJL, known as the League of Legends Japan League, is known for having a lot of problems. There's a lot of good things about the LJL and a lot of bad things. And today I want to try to highlight some of the bad things. I'm always asked, why is Japan lacking? Why is Japan League of Legends not as strong as the other countries? Well, there's a lot of things wrong with Japan's server and LJL in general. And the first thing I would like to point out is the server itself. It's still fairly new. It came out 2016 to my knowledge, and there's not many players on the Japan server. It's probably the smallest server in the whole, like, out of all the major servers, out of all the Riot servers at least that I know of. It is by far the smallest one. It is also the newest one, so that kind of makes sense. But you would think that, like, a Japan who's into like video games would be into League of Legends. It's a really hypey game. You play with your friends, you play on a computer. Your computer doesn't have to be great. Your computer can be shit. I played on a really bad computer for the longest time because I couldn't afford a new one, but it ran fine. So there's no excuse why a Japanese person wouldn't be able to pick it up and play it. So it doesn't make any sense to me. Um, but Japan is not so much into the PC market. It's mostly console, but I believe the PC market is actually pretty big. I know a lot of people that play PUBG or a lot of people that play Overwatch. So, it doesn't make sense why League of Legends wouldn't be up there along with Overwatch, PUBG. I believe it's mostly to do with advertising and marketing. I think that Riot, or at least Riot Japan, assumed that, having the biggest esports title would automatically bring players in, but I think Overwatch did a better job advertising their game, and PUBG maybe by word of mouth. It's definitely it's a lot more popular than League of Legends. Out of all the major PC games, excluding like Dota or Counter-Strike, I think League of Legends is one of the smallest PC games markets there. So now that we talk about the player base and how that's an issue, I would also like to talk about how the Japan server itself is taken. So, from my personal experience, I know the fact that if you are the best player in Japan, or the least best player in the Japan server, you're not taken seriously. Like, people don't look up to you, they look down upon you. And that's kind of weird. You don't have, like, there are issues like that in other servers where they're like, oh, if you're rank 1, that doesn't matter. But having that issue is pretty big. Like, in NA, if you're rank 1, yes, people will say like, oh, but, NA solo queue shit, so what, who the fuck cares? But in Japan, it's actually like nobody cares. Like, being rank 1 will not get you on a team. No team will take you just because you have been rank 1 for the longest time. Unless if a player finds you, like, good or impressed. The main reason for that is that none of the top Japanese players play on the Japan server. They all play on the Korean server. So you get into this issue where it's like, so all the best players, right? We have 8 teams, 5 players on each team, for starting at least. So that's 40 players. 40 of the best players in Japan don't play on your server. So essentially, you being rank 1 means you're the best of like all the shit players from their point of view at least. And that's a huge issue. And the fact that you have a lot of imports coming in, that's also, it does hurt the server in a unique way that doesn't affect other servers. Because when you have an import come to NA, let's say you bring in Impact, a Korean top laner. He's very good. He bodies all the other top laners in NA. But you get to face him in solo queue. So let's say you're an up-and-coming top laner. You're able to beat Impact in solo queue because, there's no other server that you look impressed. People be like, whoa, this guy's better than, these imports. We should pick him up. We should give him a try. But in the Japan server, all the imports don't play on Japan. They play on Korea, including the starting Japanese players. So that's 40 players, come to Japan, and at least 2 players for every team that are imports. And those imports, you don't get to play with them. You get to play against other players that didn't make it onto the LJL. So that also hurts the team. Because you have 2 imports, guaranteed pretty much 2 imports, except for one team, but whatever. So basically every team, 16 players or 16 spots are taken by imports. And you don't get to play against those imports. You don't bring the level of the Japan server up by having these imports. Which is a really unique, like, problem to have. Because if you're in, like, they all play on the Korean server. So obviously that's much better practice. I'm pretty sure any region would be like, if would you rather play on NA or KR? They'd all say KR. EU or KR? They'll probably say KR. So because KR has this really high status of being the best server in the world, everyone wants to play there. Everyone wants to practice there. So it makes sense, but in the long run, in the short run, your players will get better. Those players on the LJL teams will improve because they'll be playing against better teams, scrimming against the Korean teams, playing on the solo queue ladder against Korean players and Chinese players. There's a lot of different players on the Korean server. So being like master or challenger, that actually is pretty impressive. But if you are a nobody, let's say you're a new talent that wants to get on an LGL team, it's very hard to get on a team. So first of all, you could play on a challenger team, but Japanese teams would rather, instead of get a new rookie, they'd rather get an old veteran that has been playing for a long time, even though he sucks. Like, there's a lot of Japanese pros that should have retired a long time ago, but for some reason they're still getting offers for teams, and they're still joining teams because they don't want to give like new players a chance. Like, if you look at this 2019 spring split of the LGL, there's not many rookies around. Like, V3 has put in Masayo as their AD carry, who's replacing a veteran AD carry, and I've never seen him before except for in the challenger scene. So he is technically a rookie, and that's like the only player. And Sengoku has their mid laner Taka and their support Raina. Those two are also rookies. But if you look at like teams like Rascal Jesters, instead of getting a rookie top and a rookie AD carry, they get this long-time top laner called Alicat, who's not that great in my opinion, and they have like a AD carry that used to play mid 3 years ago that's now role swapping the AD carry. So, but he was also on Rascal Jesters a long time ago, so you can kind of see there's like some bias and some connections involved, where if you are friends with the owner or with the team player or with anyone, that will help you get a spot over someone that has no team experience, that might be hungry to win. And I think that's a huge problem, especially with the franchising coming into LGL. The fact that you have these teams that would rather go with a known talent that's not as good instead of giving a chance to a rookie, I think that's a huge problem. I think, for example, this is going to go on a tangent. I could make another video about this, but if I was Axis, I would not get 5 Japanese veterans. I'd rather save, like, instead of paying, like, for example, let's say you pay X amount of money for those 5 players, you can pay maybe half the salary for those 5 players and get 10 rookies who are all wanting to win. And you can have like in-house scrims, you can try to make them compete against each other, and let's say only 2 of those players are good. Let's say you get, out of those 10 players, 8 of them suck and you get 2 good players. That's still 2 good players. That's still very valuable. If you have, like, having 1 good Japanese player makes you a decent team. If you have 2, you can compete for this like #1 spot. If you have 3, you can win LJL. So getting 3 is hard, right? But if you get 2, you could bring in 2 imports and then maybe pick up a known talent. You get a veteran on the team. That's 1 veteran, 2 unknown or 2 rookies who are really good, and 2 Koreans, and you have yourself an LGL a team that could probably make top 3 in LGL, just like that. It'd only take like maybe 6 months to a year to get that set up. But instead, you go with the known talent. You don't give a rookie a chance. You don't bring him in on the team. And I don't mean like just putting him as a sub and saying, here's a Korean account, go off and play Korean solo queue, because that's not really training them. I want Japanese team to give them stage time to say, hey, here you go. You are now our starting AD carry or your starting mid laner. Go and feed and learn. As if you can learn, you'll be on our team next year. And then doing that strategy is what most bottom teams should do. Like, if you don't have the brand power like Axis, like, nobody cares about Axis. You're not going to get star players to come to your team because you're Axis. You'd have to pay them a lot of money. But if you have a rookie, like a player that has no experience, they're not going to be asking for a lot of money. Not many rookies are going to be cocky and be like, yo, I want twice as much as that guy because I know I'm good. They'll be like, you know what, I've never played before. I'll take the low amount of money because I think I can prove myself. And you can get good player for cheap. You maybe can, if you get lucky and you get 4 good players of all those 10 Japanese rookies, you can sell their contracts off and make a profit back like that. There's a lot of things you can do, but I don't see that many rookies given the chance. What I see is old players, players with a lot of experience, players that are friends with the other players and owners, getting those chances over and over again. And that's what tilts me the most about most of these teams. I would rather see, like for example, I'd rather see a team give chances to unknown players rather than like known players get a chance. Especially if they weren't like, if they were the best players at that time, I would understand. But these were like middle to bottom tier players at their time, and they go away from the scene or retire or stick around, and they come back because they're friends with the players. So that, I mean, this is a long tangent, but this is one thing that annoys me: the fact that there are no rookies, even though there's no relegation. We still bringing back the old talent. We still bringing back these old players who should not be in the league, or maybe they could prove me wrong, but I would rather see some new guy get a chance. And then I would be like, you know what? They're trying to build a team. They're trying to build, like, new talent. It might succeed. It will probably fail. But I'd rather see, that chance. I'd rather see someone get that chance to prove that they are good. Also, the tournament scheduling is not the best. They went to best of ones instead of where it used to be best of threes. But instead they have this really weird system where you play a best of one against one team 3 times over the course of the season. So what you have is this really weird scheduling system where some weekends you play once or some weekends you play 3 times. So imagine you're a coach and you're like, okay, I have to prep for these 3 teams this one weekend, and you might be like, okay, but the other team, that team only has to play once, so that team has a huge drafting advantage. There's huge advantages to this like system and disadvantages, where some teams get a huge advantage where they have to play against one team. Maybe you're playing against the worst team, where the other team has to play against, like 2 strong teams, 1 weak team. But it's like, okay, so we have to try to plan against these strong teams, but you underplan against the weak team, and then because of that you lose. There's a lot of weird issues with this system and format. Also, especially with the way the rosters were announced, that was also pretty weird, where he only had like a few days where like the rosters for the teams weren't announced like 3 or 4 days until the season started. So imagine if you're a team and you have to play against like 2 matches that weekend. It's a best of one. So you're like, okay, who are their players? We don't know. They won't scrim us. Or, there's no official roster announcement. So basically you get, screwed. You get cheaped out. Other teams, had an advantage by releasing their roster later on, as opposed to other teams who announce their roster early. So there's weird things like that, where you play like 2 games in a day or 3 games over the course of a weekend. So you're there like Friday, you're playing a few games, then you come back on Saturday and you play 1 more game, then go home. So it's a really weird system. I don't understand why they decided to do it like this, and I'm not a big fan. I don't like best of ones, so the fact that they're going with this weird best of 1 3 times to try to act like, no guys, it's a best of 3. It's a huge issue, and I don't see many people talking about this. So this is something I just wanted to bring up. So yeah, there's a lot of things holding back the Japanese server, and obviously there are things that I want them to improve on, like try to get more players, but that has to do with marketing. Try to have the Japanese players play on the JP server, but then that the team would be weaker because they're not on the Korean server practicing against the best possible talent. Bring in more rookies. I don't see that happening anytime soon. There's going to be a scouting ground. So hopefully these players that are trying out on the scouting ground will hopefully have a chance to shine and show up at a tournament. But as far as I can tell, that's not going to happen. I'd be surprised if 1 or 2 rookies get picked up, but I don't see anything more than that. The scheduling will have to be with Riot Japan and how they announce the schedule or what they do. Like, this is all mostly from outside information. I don't really know too much about what's happening on the inside, but from what I've heard, these are pretty common issues where teams didn't know who they're up against and they didn't know the roster, even though their team announced their roster. and there's a lot of things. And this best of one, having 3 games in one weekend, sometimes 1 game, sometimes two, also really hurts teams. Is pick a band preparation. This is a really weird system. I've never seen this done before, except for like NA when they had the Super Week where teams had to play against 4 teams in a best of one in one weekend. But besides that, I've never. I don't think that any other region does it like this. It's usually like a best of one. We play like 2 best of ones a weekend, and that's it. I've never seen like it changing from 1 to 2 to 3 depending on the weekend. So yeah, I hope with these small changes, I think that LGL can be a stronger region. Do I think they'll be like in top 16 at Worlds this year? Probably not. It'll probably be another year or two where slow changes, where you see new faces coming in. The ability to bring in a new face is very powerful. You could tell by Korea, China, Europe, the strongest regions in the world. They're always able to bring in like a new rookie, like someone you've never heard of is on this team, and if you're able to do that, that shows that your region will be stronger in the long run. So yeah, those are some things I think Japan can do better with, and I hopefully in the next year or two, or hopefully in the next few months, we'll be able to see these changes.